100 years ago today, two revolutionaries died in 100 Sidney Street, just up the road. Not much is known about one of them, William Sokolow, but quite a lot is known about the Latvian Fritz Svaars. Fritz Svaars was born in the Baltic port of Liepāja in 1885. At the age of 19, he joined the Latvian Social Democratic Workers' Party, the LSDSP. Less than a year later, when the 1905 revolution broke out, he became an urban guerrilla. Someone who knew Svaars then as a worker in the Liepāja jute factory, a member of the party who later became an anarchist, says, "I remember my first meeting with Svaars in the summer of 1905. Some gendarmes had arrested Svaars, and an assistant to the district chief came up to them, threatened them, asking whether he knew that he was facing death. Svaars jumped up like he'd been stung and shouted back at this hellhound in a terrible voice, 'I am not afraid of death. It's only a question of who stands closer to it, you or me.'" Svaars obviously survived the encounter because in October 1905 he was arrested again and accused of taking part in a series of sabotage operations and expropriations during which a policeman had been killed. He was in custody for only a few days before a group of fighters broke into the prison and freed him. He moved to Riga and continued to operate as an urban guerrilla under the direction of Jānis Žāklis, Peter the Painter, but was arrested again in January 1906 and taken to the notorious headquarters of the Riga Secret Police, where he was badly tortured. 6 days later, according to an official report to Tsar Nicholas himself, "I am humbly informing Your Excellency, the Emperor of all Russia, that today on the 17th of January at 8:15 a.m, 4 armed criminals entered the Riga Police Department, went through to the intelligence, attacked the guards of the police and intelligence departments, freed 6 prisoners and disappeared with them. The matter is under investigation." Svaars was one of these 6 prisoners freed in the attack. Peter the Painter was one of the 4 armed criminals who freed them. Afterwards, Svaars and the man known in London as George Gardstein, Poika Hartmanis, joined Peter the Painter in breaking away from the LSDSP to form the first anarchist organisation in Latvia, Pats, Vārds un Darbs, the same in word and deed. They published an anarchist communist journal called Liesma, the Flame, the same name they used in London, publishing mostly Latvian translations of articles by Peter Kropotkin. At the end of 1906, following a series of armed sieges between anarchists and police, those anarchists who survived were forced to emigrate, to regroup and reorganise the armed resistance in the Baltic from abroad. Svaars, Hartmanis and Peter the Painter went to America, where they carried out expropriations which funded the Latvian anarchist journal Brīvība, or Freedom. Other Latvians associated with the group were responsible for the Motherwell bank robbery in Scotland in April 1908 and the more notorious Tottenham outrage in London in January 1909. Svaars and Hartmanis arrived in London from America not long after the Tottenham outrage. A friend who had known them in Latvia recalls meeting them again in London, where he had politely to decline their offer of Mauser pistols as a means of settling an industrial dispute. I remember meeting Svaars and Hartmanis, who were already at the end of 1909 offered their armed assistance to the strike committee at some London East End factory in their fight with the factory administration and the strike breakers. I happened then to turn that offer down. The boys from Liepāja had been conditioned by the workers' struggle in Latvia to see the class war as literally just that, war. The inability or refusal to accept that different social conditions require different methods of struggle contributed in no small measure to the tragic outcome of the events that lay ahead of them. When Fritz, Svaars and William Sokolow carried the mortally wounded Hartmanis back to 59 Grove Street on the 16th of December 1910, after the shooting at Houndsditch, in which 5 City of London policemen had been hit and 3 killed, the die was cast. For 2 weeks, Svaars and Sokolow found refuge here up the road at 100 Sidney Street, Stepney. Fully aware that they would hang if captured, they had no intention of being taken alive. And the police, who were bent on revenge for the deaths of their colleagues, made it plain by their actions that no quarter would be offered. When the police were informed of their whereabouts, they tried first to lure them into the street, where 2 horse-drawn furniture vans full of armed police were waiting. When that didn't work, they surrounded the area with 750 police, 50 of them armed, and a company of Scots Guards from the Tower of London. At 7:30 in the morning, seemingly at a loss as to what else to do, the police sent Detective Sergeant Benjamin Leeson up to the front of the house to throw pebbles at the windows. When this elicited no response from inside, he lobbed a brick through one of the second-floor windows. This time he got an answer. A hail of bullets from Browning and Mauser pistols burst from behind the curtains, scattering the policeman opposite and wounding Leeson in the chest. The siege had begun. The siege of Sidney Street lasted for over 7 hours. The charred remains of Svaars and Sokolow were recovered from the smoking ruins of the house. An inquest held on the 6th of January concluded that Joseph, William Sokolow, had been shot through the head by a soldier whilst on an upper floor and had fallen through to the ground floor when the building collapsed. Svaars died where he had been found, on the ground floor next to the front door. A Mauser lay beneath his body and another a foot away. The remains of both men were buried on the 23rd of January 1911 in unconsecrated ground at the Corporation of London Cemetery in Manor Park. Their plain coffins of unpolished elm bored brass plates, which read simply and inaccurately, Fritz Svaars, aged 27, he was 25, and Joseph, aged 25, William Sokolow was 30. The man who betrayed them, Charles Perlman, was paid £166, 13 shillings and 4pence for Svaars. To the General Purposes Committee of Aldermen, who calculated the amount of the reward, William Sokolow was worth nothing. Think what you may about the tragic events that led to the siege of Sidney Street here 100 years ago today, but in gathering here to commemorate the last heroic resistance of 2 men against impossible odds, I ask you to avoid transforming their fight into a fetish commodity by respecting the self-sacrifice of men who died fighting for what they believed to be just. Pats, Vards und Darbs, the same in word and deeds. And in the words of the Latvian poet of the 1905 revolution, Jānis Rainis, Tu vari mus šķelt, tu vari mus lauzt, mēs tālāk sniegsim, ko saule aust. For split as you may, and break as you might, we'll yet win the future where dawn blazes bright.